What's the strangest date you've ever been on? It was my second date with this guy, and he said the exact same things that he said on the first date. Word for word. The same stories. The same random thoughts. The same questions. It freaked me out so much that at first I played along and answered in the exact same way, as though we were both following some weird script. Eventually I tried to break the mold and ask him new things, but he would just bring it back around to the same topics as last time. It was like I was in a computer program and there was a glitch. Still freaks me out to think of it. I went out with a girl to a nice Japanese restaurant. I got there first and waited at the bar. She walked in, saw me, and walked out immediately without a word. I went outside and asked her if she was okay, and she told me I can't really be in there right now. We went to an Irish pub instead and had some very awkward small talk filled with long silences. After about 45 minutes I told her I thought it was pretty clear that this wasn't working and we didn't have to stay. We could just go. I took her back to her car, parked at my house, and we said goodnight. Right before I opened my front door she asked if I wanted to get a drink at the bar across the street. I said sure. We had a great time. Got hammered. Went back to my place and had brain melting sex. We've been married 10 years now. She has some pretty serious anxiety issues that come and go, and for whatever reason the crowd/atmosphere at the Japanese place really set it off, and it took her some time to recover. Probably one from about 5 years or so back. I had just moved to London and met this guy on a dating website. He was generally not my type. Still, I was fresh out of a long-term damaging relationship and trying to meet new people, yada yada. Fast forward to the date, and he takes a call from a girl and he says to her, "Oh, I'm just in the pub with male roommate's name." I can hear her on the other end getting worked up about something and him telling her to calm down. Alarm bells already ringing. He hangs up the phone and says that was my fiancé, but not a real one. Just one I'm with for her visa. At this point I'm already thinking bloody hell. He continued on with his excuse she also lives with me in his 2-bed apartment with this other roommate. Cozy. Oh yeah. I should probably tell you I'm getting married in 3 weeks. At this exact point, I just said well, I'm going home and start pulling on my coat. His reply was even more classic. Do you want to help me buy groceries first? Met girl on Match. She showed up 20 minutes late. I had to excuse myself so I could hide out in the bathroom and write down as much of the batshit crazy things this woman was saying before I forgot. Topics included, but were not limited to, daddy issues, her mother loves her brother more, miscarriage, being married before, when we start dating, when we are married, setting me up with her assistant, how she'll duck me with blood on my face, things she does when she's high, Brazilian trance music, adopting children, what's my dog's name again, how she doesn't trust animated movies, why she was 20 minutes late, owning a business, when it's acceptable to use the C word, being a vegetarian, her blind cat, her dying uncle, abusive relationships, the city of Tampa, free range urination, and can we order tater tots? We didn't go out again. We had been talking on the phone for about a month already. He tells me his car is booted outside of his house. He had a long drawn out story about how he could not get the boot removed. His dad was staying with him and he thought would be able to use his dad's car, but now he can't. So I go to get him to go somewhere to eat. He starts panicking saying, "Oh great. Now I'm in the car with you and I'm going to get accused of rape or something." I asked him what the hell he was talking about. He just kept rocking in his seat anxiously, worried that he would be accused of rape. I drove to the nearest area with food and asked him where he wanted to go. He said he had no money and wanted to go home. So I took him home. Then he asked me if he could borrow $20. I don't know why, but I gave it to him. After this, he called me repeatedly and I ignored his calls. He texted me asking why he was not good enough for me to date. I kept ignoring him. Fast forward 3 years. He is on a dating site I'm on. He messages me but does not remember who I am. He tells me that a year ago his longtime girlfriend passed away, the one he had lived with for 10 years. So, He was not staying with his dad, and he was freaking out because he lived with his girlfriend when he met me right outside of his house. I called him out on it and he tried to pretend I had the wrong guy, but he had the same name and worked at the same place and looked like the same guy. Very bizarre. I went on a date with a guy in my apartment block only to see his disappointed face when my girlfriend called me on the way home. I realized he'd assumed I was gay and that I'd assumed he was just a friendly guy wanted to hang out. I've posted this before because it's so weird. I went for a meal with this girl I met through a dating app and it was going really well. We started talking about movies and then we decided to go to the cinema to go watch Inception. She said there was a cinema nearby, but I didn't know the area at all. So I used the GPS on my phone and she held it and directed me. Once we got there we started walking inside and I realized I didn't have my phone in my pocket. I said I must have left it in the car and started to walk back to get it. She was trying to get me to leave it and saying we would miss the film, but the phone was only about a week old, so I was really paranoid about it. We checked the car for about 10 minutes, but we couldn't find it. I asked her to check her jacket and her bag, but she said it wasn't there. A couple parked next to us, so I asked them to ring my number because I couldn't find it. It started to ring and it was obviously coming from my date's handbag. She took it out and said she must have missed it. I thanked the couple and locked my car, and as I turned back around she was walking the other way. I ran to catch up and asked what was going on, but she was very dismissive and was barely talking. That's when I realized it wasn't an accident and just left her to walk home alone. The first time I ever used Tinder was also my worst experience with Tinder. The date itself was fine, a little stiff, but fine. Typical questions like what are you studying? Where did you grow up? Etc. We ate dinner and I didn't plan on meeting up with him again. The next day I got a text from him saying, "Hey." I text him back hi. He asks me what's up. I say not a whole lot, what's up with you? End up getting a huge paragraph back talking about his creative process for writing and trying to direct a specific type of porno where women crush rats and tarantulas between their breasts. What the fuck? My freshman year in college I had a crush on a girl from my high school. When I asked her out, she informed me that she only dated women. I'm male. She insisted that we were still friends. She just didn't roll that way. She offered to be my wingman and I gladly took her up on the offer. A few weeks later she had set me up on a semi-blind date with one of her friends. We'll call her Monica. The three of us met at Arby's because we were fancy and my friend tried playing matchmaker. Pimp Ninja Man loves theater and so do you. Monica. Monica loves music and so do you. Pimp Ninja Man. The date was going fine. So my friend decided to leave Monica and I alone. We talked a bit more and decided to go see a movie. I didn't have a car at the time, so I hopped in Monica's passenger seat and we went on our way. That's when shit got weird. About 2 minutes after leaving Arby's, Monica receives a phone call. She says it's her roommate and she needs to answer it. She picks up the phone and I hear a man's voice. I was a bit surprised, but it's not too unusual for a girl to have a guy for a roommate. Monica and her roommate get into some kind of argument and she pulls over to a gas station. Another car pulls in right beside us. Again, I didn't think anything of it at the time. Monica turns to me and says I need to go talk to my roommate. Just wait here for a minute. I assume she just wants to be on the phone in private. But what happens next will shock you. Monica gets out of the car and goes to talk to the driver of the car that pulled in next to us. This is where I start to freak out. What are the odds that her roommate happened to pull up right beside us? Exclamation mark. I hear a bit of yelling and then I start thinking about an escape plan. At this point, Monica opens my car door and says, "Hey, I'm really sorry to do this, but my roommate is going to have to take you home." Now, this is the part of the movie where someone in the audience screams, "Don't you go with him." Now, that's how you get killed. White people always going with the strange man thinking everything will just be a-okay. I wish I could say I got smart. Said, "No thank you. I'll just walk," and went home. But I didn't. With some combination of confusion and curiosity, I get out of Monica's car and head into the passenger seat of this stranger. We're in my hometown, so I know if he goes any direction he's not supposed to, I can just bail out of the car and run to freedom. The guy was pretty big. I was 6 feet 2 at the time, and he was significantly bigger than me, if that tells you anything. I don't remember his name, but we'll just call him Ross. Anyway, Ross starts driving back to my dorm, and we are sitting in awkward silence for most of the trip. Eventually, he says, "So how do you know Monica?" I knew something fishy was happening, so I wasn't about to say we were on a date. I just say, "Oh, we have mutual friend," and hope Ross doesn't get suspicious. He just nodded his head and kept driving. Apparently Ross was resolving some anger in his head, because out of nowhere he starts talking, as if we were in the middle of a much more personal conversation. Yeah. A lot of people at our church are upset that Monica and I live together. I think they are just assuming we are having sex all the time or something. It shouldn't even matter since we are engaged. But it's still annoying to hear stuff like that, you know? I just nod my head as I realize what just happened. Apparently my lesbian friend set me up on a blind date with an engaged girl, and her fiancé came and picked me up to take me home. I was silent the rest of the night. I told Ross the wrong dorm, so he wouldn't know where I lived. And I got out of the car and just walked around campus for a bit. It was definitely the strangest date I've ever been on. So I met this guy when I was in college in DC, and he invited me go to on his motorcycle to his family's farm in rural Virginia. I told my best friend, and she was appalled. He could be an axe murderer. You could come home in a dozen pickle jars. I poo-pooed her and went on the 2-hour ride out to the farm. We get there and take a walk up the mountain behind the farm. He's picking me wildflowers along the way. We are having a grand time watching the wild turkeys. As we are walking down, there's a fence with a tree growing next to it, and I decide to swing myself over the fence like Tarzan. Unfortunately, there was a huge rock at my landing spot, and I took a nasty tumble, spraining my ankle pretty badly. We limped back to the farmhouse, really a 2-room cottage, and got my boot off, and it was immediately obvious I wouldn't be getting it back on. So much for riding home that afternoon. He said, "We'll have to spend the night here and wait for the swelling to go down." I'm thinking, pickle jars. He rides to the local Liga to pick up some food, nothing in the house, and comes back with groceries and asks, "Guess what's for dinner?" "Chicken Kiev," I answered. It was the most unlikely thing I could think of at the time. His face fell. He had picked up the ingredients to make chicken Kiev, thinking it would impress me. We should have known right then and there. We've now been married 31 years and have 2 kids. Internet date at a bar. First time meeting the guy. He tells me over a bowl of eggplant chips that he's so good in bed that the last woman he boned spontaneously lactated from the mind-blowing pleasure of it all. Got asked out by a girl I knew and was sort of interested in, but didn't really know all that well. We went to an open-air jazz concert. Not really my thing, but sure. Once there she immediately was all over me, hugging, sitting on my lap, etc. Things were going great, or so I thought. It was at that point when things started getting weird. Several band members were giving us strange looks from stage while playing their jazz music. One piano player was mouthing things in our direction, but I couldn't make out what he wanted. People were rude to me for no reason whatsoever while getting drinks. Long story short, my date knew just about all people there and wanted to get back publicly at her very large boyfriend for cheating on her. Don't hate on me, jazz ducks. I'm just an innocent sucker. Awkward ending. I met them both later that evening at the train station and she pretended not to see me. I went on a Tinder date with a guy who is now in my contacts as Donatan Swapinispic. Prior to the date he seemed normal. We texted and talked on the phone, then arranged to meet at a restaurant/bar. He was cute, but definitely bitter about something. He was from California and apparently didn't like this new city we were in. He started talking about sex and blowjobs and complaining about how uptight everyone here is about sex. He invited the waitress to a party his company was throwing. After sending back the french fries he ordered, I showed him a picture of my dog on my phone. He took out his phone and showed me a picture of his penis. We walked out of the restaurant together to get our cars from the valet. My car came first and I left. He texted me later that he had my sweater. Apparently I dropped it on the way out, and if I wanted to see it again I'd have to hang out with him. RIP. Sweater. Please subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more of Reddit universe.